is your first week of school.
You are now listening to the Motivated Mama podcast. This is a community for parents that want to be authentically themselves while looking for judgment-free, genuine, and heartfelt parenting advice. We talk to other mothers and experts to get small, easy steps that we can take to help us accomplish our goals. Learn with me as we discover ways to break patterns of unproductive behavior repeated generation after generation in our families. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of The Motivated Mama with me, your host, Sydney Ross, The Motivated Mama. So today's conversation is going to be all about the birds and the bees. And we're discussing the birds and the bees because I want to help everyone become sex positive parents. And the reason why this is such an important topic to discuss when raising children is because a lot of us did not get these one-on-one sex positive talks. A lot of sexuality talks did not begin until we were teenagers in high school. For a lot of people, that didn't even happen until, after they had already begun having sex. And I feel like it is our jobs as parents to teach our children about sex, regardless if they open up a conversation or not. So growing up, this was not something that we talked about. This was not something that we discussed. I never had a sex talk with my parents, which to me was not safe, because then you lean on your own understanding of what sex is, and you also, look to what others are saying, what's in the media. So you don't really get, valuable information as a child or a teenager when it comes to sex, which is very, very dangerous. It's dangerous for your health. It's dangerous for your well-being. It's dangerous for your mental. So that's why it is our jobs to equip our children with the correct information when it comes to sex. So just a brief, not even necessarily story time. I'm going to go over how I feel that I'm already moving in the direction of being a sex positive parent before we actually get into, how we can go about that. So for me, like I said, I didn't get those talks. So I remember when I did start having sex, I just told my mom, like, hey, I lost my virginity, basically. And when my dad found out that I was having sex, or he pretty much guessed it because I had a steady boyfriend at the time, he was just like, make sure to stay protected. That was it. I didn't have anything else other than that. Nothing from my mom and my dad just saying, make sure to stay protected. So when it comes to my own children, I want to make sure that they are well aware of, what sex is, what pleasure is, the dangers behind it, and I don't want it to be a scare tactic. I want it to be like anything with our bodies or health wise that we discuss. So I have a 2-year-old and a 10-year-old. With my 2-year-old, to begin, sex positivity, we talk about simple things. So people usually think like, oh my God, you would talk to a 2-year-old about sex. Not necessarily. It's just equipping them with the correct language at this time. So for my 2-year-old, we say the correct, words when it comes to body parts. And that includes private parts. So we say breast, we say penis, we say vagina, so he knows what is what. And, he knows that he's a male and he has a penis. He knows that mommy is a female, sister is a female. They don't have a penis, they have a vagina. And we only introduced that when he started noticing, because I take a shower, I have a 2 year old, it's almost impossible to keep a 2 year old away from you naked. So, when he points out, what is that? I tell him, and then we keep it going like as if I told him what his ears or his eyes or his nose is. So we just make sure to put the correct phrases, or I mean the correct wording for body parts. And, some people feel uncomfortable with that. I've seen in many mom groups and many parents express like, I don't want to hear my 2 year old saying that. That's a you problem. That's not a them problem. They don't feel like it's anything weird. It's just a body part. And I feel like when we are moving in the direction of being sex positive parents, we have to keep the air clean like that and make it so it's something normal. We have to stop making like it's something weird and uncomfortable and bad or taboo, because that's when all the danger and the issues come. So if we just openly speak about these things like we would anything else health wise, it makes it easier and more comfortable for your children to ingest. Now, when it comes to my 10-year-old with having sex talks, with having sex talks, one thing that I try to be very open about is, things that she sees like on TV and social media. She has a lot of questions, and we have a pretty open, relationship where we talk about any and everything. We've talked about puberty. She knows like bodily functions. She knows all of that stuff. So when we talk about sex, one of the main driving factors that I try to explain to her is the falsehood and a lot of stuff that she sees in the media, how that's not really how sex goes. And I try to make sure she knows all the correct words for body parts, make sure she knows what is okay and what isn't okay, make sure she knows who should, and nobody should be touching you, making sure that she understands that certain things are normal and okay, such as masturbation, things like that. So we're going to get into that when we're talking about tips for each age group. But I'm pretty open when it comes to sex talks with my children, just because I don't want it to be something weird. And if something happens or if they have questions, they're not uncomfortable coming to me for it, because you want your children coming to you for this stuff. You don't want your 10-year-old asking 10-year-old Billy at school what this is that is, because 10-year-old Billy watches porn on his mom's computer at nighttime because mom doesn't check anything. You're just opening up a wormhole of bullshit, and you don't want your kids in danger thinking that they know things that they don't necessarily know or understand. So that is the whole point of today. We want to make sure our children are safe. And we want to make sure not to be uncomfortable with it. So, if you feel any kind of discomfort when having talks about sex with your children, I feel like that is a place of healing that you need to take up. Because, like I said, a lot of us did not receive that. So it is really hard. I have to go and look up things when stuff comes up. I don't just automatically know this stuff because I didn't have any type of training. And when you go to school, they preach abstinence and STDs, and that is it. They don't teach you anything else about anything when it comes to sex. So that's our job. But if you're uncomfortable with that, or if you have trauma when it comes to sex, or you've dealt with your own issues when it comes to sex, that is really something that you need to seek counseling or help from, because you don't want your children to go through those same things because you're unable to be that guide for them. It's just going to continue a dangerous cycle. So, get help with that, so that way you are able to have that type of open communication with your children, and you're not shutting them down or making things seem weird and uncomfortable. So, first, I'm going to let you all know that all of our advice and tips today, our resource is coming from a website. And the website is called liesaboutparenting.com. So liesaboutparenting.com, and I will make sure to tag that link in the show notes. Um, and this is just, another parenting blog site. But the thing that I'm going over is age appropriate sex talks. So talk to your kids about sex based off of their age. And I really liked this resource that I found because it breaks it down by age, but it also has like their own little analogies and things that make it easier to have these sex talks with your kid. So basically, I'm just going to go through, the advice that they have, and then we'll give you other resources as well. Um, so, first of all, when it comes to sex, we need the number one thing that we need to open our minds to and understand is our children are exposed to sex way earlier than we think. So, like we have the parents who are like, oh, we got to try to block every single thing. There's no way around it, even if you didn't have electricity, TV, or anything. If your kids see other kids, or if they have conversations with other kids or relationships, they are exposed to sex. I know this for a fact because my daughter came home last year in the fourth grade telling me about all types of stuff that kids in her class are looking at and seeing and talking about. So they are very well aware of sex at early ages. So like 9 and 10 and probably way younger because they're watching you, they watch TV, they're at school with other kids, and you don't know what other children are exposed to. Um, so they're talking about it. So that's one thing that all of us need to just get over as parents. And we need to really understand that our children talk about sex, they know about sex, and that's why it is our jobs as parents to give them the correct information because kids have no clue what they're talking about. So, first, we're going to start off with, age appropriate sex talks based off of each age group. So, the first age group is age 0 to 3, so the very first years. And they like to call this the nice time. So nice is short for name it, claim, and explain. So name it. That basically means you're going to begin to use anatomically correct names for all body parts. Don't be weirded out by it. Don't make it weird. A penis is a penis. A vagina is a vagina. Your anus is your anus. Breasts are breasts. Make sure you're using anatomically correct names for all body parts. Um, Even, testicles, vulvas, all of that. Make sure you're using correct names for all those body parts, just like you would eyes, eyebrows, nose, lips, fingers, fingernails, cuticles. Make sure you're just incorporating that. Make sure they recognize the difference between male and female body parts. That's easy. And encourage kids to claim their bodies as their own. So this is a time to encourage children to, especially, the perfect time to have those discussions, set boundaries. If they say no, that means those talks, children this small is, during halftime or getting ready to go to the swimming pool. I feel like these are the perfect times to talk about, body parts and boundaries with those body parts. So nobody should be touching these parts. These parts are your private parts. Anything that's covered by your swimming suit is your private part, and that is not a place that anybody should be touching. Only mommy if she's giving you a bath. Nobody else should be asking to touch these parts, and nobody else should be asking you to touch those parts on them, and nobody should be asking you to touch those parts on yourself while they're watching. Make sure that they understand boundaries, and make sure that they understand the power in their no. No means no. And the perfect time to set these boundaries as well is when it comes to, giving hugs and kisses to family members. If they don't want to be picked up, they don't want to be picked up. If they don't want to say bye, they don't have to say bye. If they don't want to give a hug, they don't have to give a hug. If they don't want to kiss Aunt Janine at Christmas time, they don't have to kiss Aunt Janine. So it's allowing them to set boundaries for themselves. And then another thing at this age, from 0 to 3, is to explain bodily processes. Explain different things that your body does, how it processes, and that includes pregnancy and birth. But you want to do these in very simple terms. You don't have to give them full details on how somebody gets pregnant. You just let them know, hey, mommy and daddy love each other, and now mommy's pregnant. A sperm meets an egg, it turns into a baby, and then mommy pushes the baby out, or the doctor takes the baby out. Simple, clean cut. And usually at this age, they're not going to go, into deep conversation. They pretty much take and keep it moving. And I feel like that's why it is so simple, when talking about body parts or explaining these things. Your kids at that age where they don't even think that it's weird. They're just like, okay, cool. Keep it moving. So the next age group is age 3 to 5. For this age, they say it's time for ask and tell. So you want to deepen the nice conversation. So name it, claim, and explain. And then you want to add discussions about privacy. And about privacy, I feel like that means, sexuality is private and it happens at home. Or, if you touch yourself, that's something that you do, in the bathroom or in your bedroom behind closed doors. That's not something that we, do out in public. We don't touch ourselves out in public, things like that. And also start an ask and tell dialogue. So encourage conversations about how their bodies feel, to get kids thinking about goodness of intimacy, and discuss what doesn't feel good. So I feel like this is very important, because a lot of people, when they do have or have had sex talks with their parents, it's always taboo. It's always bad, 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 inappropriate, 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 which is not okay. Especially, you see this a lot when it comes to raising girls. So at this age, we want to give them an idea of what pleasure is. Does that mean explain them touching themselves? No. We explain pleasure by simple things like, when you eat, when you're hungry and you eat, it feels good. When you eat, it's satisfying. If you have an itch and you scratch it, that feels good. It's satisfying. When you fall on your knee, that hurts. So we really want to have those discussions about what feels good and what hurts. And that kind of gives them an idea of pleasure and pain. What is good and what is not okay. And this gives them an idea of goodness of intimacy, how things should feel versus how things should not feel. But we're not even getting into, actual sexual intercourse. We're just wanting them to recognize pleasure, and what that actually means. So for ages 5 to 8, they call this puberty politeness. The nice talk continues, name it, claim, and explain. At this time, we're going to talk about the anatomy of sexual intercourse. So we talk about what that actually is. What is sex? Because at this age, kids are wanting to know, or they heard about it, or they're curious about it. So this is the time where you really have to let your guard down. So if you only have toddlers right now, and you're uncomfortable with these discussions, now is the time to seek help, or guidance or counseling. So that way, when you get to this 5 to 8 year old mark, whether, depending on the maturity of your kid at this time, you're comfortable with having these types of discussions, because now is when we're getting into the thick of it. So we're going to discuss, what sexual intercourse actually is. And this is a time where we start to learn about different sexual orientations. So the variations of sexuality. So hetero, homo, bisexual, transsexual. So this is the time, and especially in a world that we live in now, we can't stop what's going on. It's out here. I know some people get irritated. I personally am a parent that does not care. I think that, you know, people should not be in hiding. People should be able to be free to be who they want to be. Their sexuality is their business. I don't feel like this is one thing that we need to hide from our children, because heterosexuality is a form of sexuality. So a man and a woman is still a form of sexuality, just like a woman and a woman, a man and a man, transsexuals, bisexuals, all of that is something that, it's out here. People are coming out and comfortable with themselves. So we need to just go with the flow. That's just personally how I feel about it. So at this age, your children are seeing it. They see the drag shows. They see, pride parades. They see it on TV. It's being incorporated into everyday life, which I personally feel like it should have been incorporated in everyday life, because people shouldn't be in hiding. Just like I feel like different races should be in everyday life. It should not just be one way, clean, cut, and dry, because this is the world that we live in, and your kids should know about everything that's going on in the world at an age appropriate time. So from 5 to 8 is when, it's time to start having those discussions about, this is what this person is, and that is okay. Simple as that. It's just normal. As long as you keep stuff normal, it's gonna be normal. When you start making stuff weird and messed up, that's when things get rocky. Um, and then puberty. Puberty can start at age 9. I know some kids, puberty starts younger than that. So, but puberty can start at age 9. So it's time to prepare. So discuss basic social conventions of privacy, nudity, and respect for others in relationships. You want to open up puberty talks. They have so many books. I highly recommend. And you know what? We'll post that too when we post this video. I'll post some links on our social media pages of different books, so that way you can start having those puberty talks. And the books make everything easy. Me and my daughter have one book that we're currently reading and we're working through, and we'll just do a chapter and we read it together. And if she has more questions, she can ask me questions. But that definitely makes it a whole lot easier to have these talks and discussions, and they're getting true knowledge of what is actually going on, not just what everybody's talking about or what we see on the outside. And then you want to continue the conversation of what feels good, what doesn't feel good. So, age 8 to 10, it says less questions, more curiosity. So, a child at this age can handle basic explanations on just about any topic. So, that includes rape and abuse. So, this is a time where, I feel like even earlier than 8 to 10, you can discuss those type of things, in a not so crazy detailed way when they're younger. But we know that sexual abuse happens no matter what your age is. So I don't feel like waiting until a kid is 10 years old to tell them what those things are. I don't feel like that's necessarily beneficial, but it's up to you, up to your discretion as a parent. But we know that these things take place and they happen younger than 10 years old. So we always want to prepare our children and let them know what those things are, just in case, because we do need to keep them safe no matter what. Um, and then we want to provide information about sexuality and puberty for both sexes. So continue those puberty talks, continue those sexuality talks. Um, but there is more curiosity. So we can talk about things like relationships, how sex should go in relationships, what things are okay and what things aren't okay. We can talk about sexually transmitted diseases. We can talk about different forms of protection. We can talk about abortion at this time. Once again, we're going through a really crazy time. So discussing what abortion is. And like I said, you don't have to say it like this is what actually happens unless your kid asks. But you can just say, hey, an abortion is when somebody no longer wants to be pregnant anymore. And that can be for various reasons. It can be because financially they don't have the money to take care of a child. It can be because they're sick themselves and they're going through something and it's going to be very difficult for them to take care of a child. It can be the timing is not right. It can be, it could have happened. A pregnancy can be created from abuse and they don't want to continue that. So, you can explain those different things in details at this age. And acknowledge not everyone fits the same gender molds. So, talking about different forms of sexuality, but everyone can experience pleasure, and pleasure is a great thing. So, not shaming when it comes to pleasure. We know that sex feels good. We know that sex runs the world. It literally does. It's in everything. Our children would not be here without it. That's how life continues. And it's okay for that to feel good. And just let them know, like, hey, when you get to a certain age, we're not promoting that kids have sex young. That's not what we're doing. We want them to have healthy sexual relationships and encounters when the time comes. So, when I discuss sex with my daughter, I always say, when the time comes, when you do start experiencing sex, when you are older, I try to highlight that, it should be pleasurable. And I feel like this is something really important to discuss when you have daughters. So many times with boys, it's just brushed off like, it's okay, it's no big deal, or what he's doing, or it's okay for men and boys to experience pleasure, but it's not okay for girls. And that's one thing that I want to get across for my daughter is a sexual encounter, or when you have a sexual relationship with somebody, it should be enjoyable for you. Letting her know that she has power in those moments, that it should be something that she feels good at the end of the day. She feels great in those moments. Making sure that she knows that, because so many women today, adult women, have not even experienced an orgasm. So many women today don't even understand that this is for them too. It's not just a time for a man. And that's why, even when it comes to, like porn, my daughter slipped in and, we had to take her phone because she was watching that, or she had stumbled upon porn. And I had to have a talk with her about that. Like, it's not ideal, because we know that that industry is mainly dedicated towards men and the pleasure of men and what men need to get off. And that's not what it's all about. So just making sure to instill those values in our sons and our daughters equally, to let them know that this should be a pleasurable experience for both parties, not just one, and you are entitled to that pleasure. And reinforce healthy boundaries and self-esteem. They should feel great, and they have the right to say no. Once it is time for you to start having sex, or once you have a boyfriend and you are doing things regularly, if you don't want to, you don't have to. Nobody is entitled to your body. So just letting them know, like, you can enforce boundaries. Even during sexual acts, you can enforce boundaries. There are things that I do not like that I'm not going to do, and that is okay. And if somebody can't respect that, then that means they don't respect you. So just giving them those kind of tools. So for ages 9 to 10, what makes a good relationship? Um, Initiate conversations if you have to, but make sure they continue. So make sure the sex talks continue. Sex talks should not end. This is something that needs to continue, whether your kids are coming to you or not. You need to initiate these talks if they're not coming to you about them. And reinforce what they learned. So go over all of the things that you've already talked about. Ask them, make sure that they know and they're remembering everything that you guys have already discussed with one another. Tweens need to know about safe sex and contraception. So this is a really great time to highlight different forms of protection and contraceptives. So that way they know and what they're for and what they do, so that they know like these prevent STDs, contraceptives, prevent unwanted pregnancy. So letting them know what that is. And I feel like as well for our girls, letting them know the side effects and the different dangers that come in line with different types of contraceptives. Where I don't feel like we should any longer be in the age of, oh, you got your period, you're getting on birth control, like without their consent or their say so or their knowledge, because these things have a lot of side effects that people aren't looking into. So, and if you don't know it, you need to gain the knowledge when it comes to contraceptives, so that way your children know. Um, what Discuss what makes relationships healthy, self-empowered, and positive, and what does not. So even outside of the sex part, let them know what makes a healthy relationship with people, because these are people that they're going to be having sex with. So let them know, what it takes to make a healthy relationship, what healthy communication looks like, what healthy boundaries look like. So let them know what makes a real relationship work, how to make somebody else happy, how you should be happy. You know, what is a healthy relationship? So that is definitely something that needs to be discussed. And always let them know that, they should feel self empowered. Explain relationship choices and feelings for others, including how to start, continue, and end a relationship. So, if they have feelings for somebody, how to start a relationship with that person, how to listen to that person, how to make sure you're being listened to, how does a relationship continue, how to get past conflict and disagreements, how to get past arguments, and when is it time to call it quits. And it's okay to call it quits, and what that entails when you do call it quits. Go over all of the emotions and the feelings and things that it really takes, because our children need to know, as well as us, what makes healthy relationships, and what they're getting themselves into when they do end a relationship, or if somebody was to end a relationship with them. We don't want them shell shocked and depressed and not knowing what to do. So age 13 to 18, the pleasure talk. By now, your child has all the facts about sexual interactions. Now it's time to reinforce safety and discuss the anatomy of pleasure. Whatever your gender is attracted to, talk about pleasure. Explore relationships, including assertiveness, vulnerability, communication techniques, personal values, asking for help, and making choices. And especially, this is a time to talk about the difference between love and lust. Do you really love somebody, or are you just feeling hot for them? They're at that age, 13 to 18, where that is okay to discuss. Okay, so age 13 to 18 is the pleasure talk. So for this, you want to, by now your child knows all the facts about sexuality, sexual intercourse, all of that. We want to continue to talk about, pleasure. Who are they attracted to? Sexuality, different forms of sexuality, what that means to them. What do they identify as at this point? But I think this is a really great time to discuss the difference about love and lust, because these teenage years are really rocky and tricky when it comes to like relationships and understanding, you know, love and lust. And our kids, you know, if they don't have a really good idea of that, then they're often misconstrued. Um, you know, they find themselves obsessing over people, and things like that. So we want to make sure that they understand the distinction between actually loving somebody. What is love? What does love mean? What does love feel like? And what is lust? So lust, you know, I like, you know, the sexual aspects of this, but do I actually like this person as a person? So really making that distinction. And then lastly, ages 18 and up, it's all about opening up and making them need you. So at this point, we have to accept that our children are adults at this point, and they need to be treated like adults at this time. You know, regardless of what capacity they need us, 18 and up, they are adults and they need to be treated with adults and they need to be given the responsibility and the respect of an adult. Um, and or at this point they may not need you at all, but you should make them want you. So how do you do that? By all of this time before being an open book, by all of this time before being vulnerable, by all this time before sharing your experiences when it comes to sex, all this time before making sex talks comfortable, making all conversations comfortable, whether they're difficult or easy conversations, making sure to keep an open line of communication with your kids. So what does that mean? That means not waiting for them to come to you, but to continue talking to them regardless. Um, and continue to offer physical and emotional talks about intimacy, while respecting their need for independence. So, not judging their choices, not turning your nose up, or always having something negative to say when it comes to the choices they make, whether that is who they're having sex with, if they're having sex, or what their sexual orientation is. You know, being completely accepting. That's their independence and respectful of their privacy. You know, when it comes to their privacy space to give you, you know, they tell you where the cutoff is. It's not your time to pry into everything. Let them feel comfortable coming to you about things. You can ask them questions, but if they don't give you so much, don't try to push past the boundaries that they have set when it comes to their privacy and their sexual life. And appreciate them and share your values and your experiences. So, like I said, make sure that you know you're being an open book as well. Make sure you know you're sharing, but let them know that you've had these things. You don't have to tell them everything that you're personally doing. So that way they don't feel like you're just a judgmental. It comes from you being vulnerable in those moments too. You don't know what you're talking about. So a lot of that, you know, openness, and make sure that you know you're facilitating their access to sexual and reproductive health care. So you know those are things you can stay in line with, making sure that like, hey, they're taking the initiative to stay healthy, making sure that they are going to those annual checkups, making sure they are getting screened regularly for STDs, especially if you know that they have an open sex life. So just, you know, make those suggestions to keep them on a safe and healthy track. And lastly, it's up to us to continue these conversations in their childhood, throughout their adult lives. It is ultimately up to us because, like I said, they're not always going to be like, "Hey, mom, let's talk about sex today." You know, it's up to you to keep that ball rolling, regardless if they come to you about it or not. Keep talking to them about it. Make it normal. Make it comfortable for them. Um, and always keep sex in a good life. Sexuality and pleasure should always, you know, be something that's highlighted as good. Let's not put those negative connotations to it. Let's not make it taboo for them. Let's keep it light and airy and open and, easy to talk about. Um, Ultimately, in the end, we're going to raise healthier children. And we can also make, STD rates drop, unwanted pregnancy to drop. These things, when we educate our children, we empower our children. So make sure to continue to educate them. Make sure to continue to empower them when it comes to sex and pleasure, and relationships. And that way we empower them, and then we're also allowing them to love their bodies, and allowing them to explore their bodies, without feeling guilty or negative about it. We want to keep it positive. And that's how we become and remain sex positive parents. So I hope that all of these tips really helped you guys today. Like I said, I will put the link to Lies About Parenting. I will put that link in the show notes. Be sure that you are going to our Facebook page, the Motivated Mama Podcast. We have the website, momamapodcast.com. We're on YouTube. And then I also have the personal parenting support group, The Motivated Mama, on Facebook as well. So make sure you're checking those out. Whenever we do post these videos on social media, I will be posting the links to everything as well as additional resources. Also, be sure to, invite all of your friends and family who are parents or whoever works closely with children. Invite them to listen to our podcast, like and subscribe on whatever platform you listen to us on. Even if that's you watching us on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe and to sign up to receive notifications for different social media sites and for our YouTube, so that way you know when episodes are dropping. Our episodes are aired every Tuesday is a new episode. So I do thank you guys so much for listening today. If you want to submit a question or if you want to be on the show, message me at contact@momamapodcast.com. That's MOMAMA podcast.com. Please tell all the moms you know about the podcast, our Facebook group, YouTube channel, and community events. Your recommendation helps our show grow. Please rate and review us wherever you listen to our podcast.